Hey everybody, time for the Surf and Turf Show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Surf and Turf Show. We are back on our normal schedule. It is morning. We're feeling extra peppy today, I think. But what about you, Adam? How are you doing this morning?
Just a rainy day here in Western New York.
That's what
Beautiful June. Still not super hot here.
still could be snowing any day. Like, that's what you get for living in a part of the country that's cold in the summer. Like, what the hell, man? It's June. It should be.
Yes. My wife reminds me of that fact fairly often.
Is this not a joint base? Is this not a joint moving
It is
decision?
a point of tension. Yes, the weather here is obviously, like, I draw energy from gloomy skies, but not everybody works that way.
No, and it's clearly your fault that it's rainy. I'm glad you appreciate that. I'm glad that you just own that right up front, that it is your doing. You probably make it rain more just to cause trouble and friction.
So, I mean, some of the happiest times of my life, my ship was in a dry dock up in Bremerton, Washington, and that place rains almost every day, and I was just in hog heaven there. I was just like, yes, this is my these are my people.
I thought you were being sarcastic about the rain, but I guess you actually enjoy rain.
You remember that song from the '90s? I'm only happy when it rains.
Garbage, Shirley
It's
Manson,
definitely
absolutely.
yes, garbage.
Yeah, but you don't
Yes,
mean like the dark and kind of gloomy way. You just mean that literally you like your head to be soaking wet and dripping and have
I,
like water run down your crack
yes.
and stuff, which is just the worst
All
feeling.
all manifestations of rain.
I,
Yes, that includes. Yes.
So we're going to talk some of this today, but man, I was infantry dude for a long time, and there is nothing worse to me than the moment when you're outside, you're in the field, you're equivalent of camping, but army camping, so it sucks, and you're just walking around, and there's that moment when you hit saturation, like it's raining, okay, I can still pretend like I'm a little dry, I've still got spots on me that are dry, and I can cling to those spots in kind of this false hope that things are all right, and then there's something about the water running down the crack of your ass that's the moment. There it is. Everything is now wet and my life sucks. Like that's
So you had a few fucks, and then the last one, when the water went down the crack, your last fuck
it's it.
just floated away
Yep.
into the ether.
My
It's
field has
gone.
has runneth bare, right? I mean, however, what a great song, right? That one, but but yes, that's it.
So
It's over.
how? Let me ask you this: if it's not raining, how far would you walk if you were on patrol, not to get your boots soaked in a water source?
Infinitely far. I mean, obviously, it depended on if there was a time hack or something else. If you really had to make it, but I would say it's most grudging that I will walk into like do a
Yeah,
river crossing and just no,
yeah.
man, come on. My feet are going to be wet forever. Like until I go home, they will be wet.
Yeah, I think we walked a couple miles once just to find a good spot to cross.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's really just the illusion of comfort. Like all of that stupid field math that you do. Like, well, if I just do this, it'll be slightly more comfortable. Like you're splitting hairs. We're down at the very bottom of like human subsistence level comfort, but you're like, somehow, if I just do this one really inconvenient thing, it'll be that much better. Like,
Yes, it's about the little things.
it does become about the little things. But I think we'll get into all that. But first, before we get into any of our historicals, man, I got to eat some crow. So after the episode, we had obviously a dramatic showdown about the status of the Fonz and his shark jump. You remember this?
We did. We were at loggerheads.
We hit just straight up. It was impasse. There was the, immovable object and the irresistible force. There was no resolution. Um, Fortunately, we live in 2025, so I just Googled it sometime this week when I remembered that we talked about it. And sure enough, I was dead wrong. Like, it is clearly Fonz in a leather jacket, water skiing, and he jumps over the shark. Hands down, Adam was right. But man, I I don't. It's not overstating it to say it kind of rocked me a little bit, and here's why. It has nothing to do with the Fonz. The leather jacket and the inappropriately short swimsuit are kind of weird. That's weird, but that was a different kind of rocking. I kind of got past that.
It was a different time. It was a different time
It's
back
a
then.
different time. I think UDT shorts are still the same today, but um, but that aside, what got me so much is I am a nonfiction author, and so when I remember something to me, I remembered that scene crystal clear. Like I could picture it in my head. Like, no, it was definitely a motorcycle. It was definitely jumping over this tank. And I remembered it like super clearly. And it kind of blew my mind. And it's good to have these reminders, right? It's actually a positive thing, but reminders just how imperfect memory can be. Like I was sure I was right. Nope. Dead wrong. 100% dead wrong. Unless the internet, unless after that show, somebody went out and modified YouTube to make you seem right, which is, that's
Well,
possible, right? That we got to accept that that's
it
possible.
is. It's listen. We got a lot of diehard fans out there. It's definitely possible that one of them did
Well,
that.
apparently you
But
did.
have you? Yes. So have you heard? You've heard of the Mandela effect, right?
Mm,
It's this
no.
idea. So basically, it's this idea that a lot of people have the same false recollection of something, to the point where people think that, like, it's like a quantum, like we've split into like a parallel dimension. So, for example, I am 100% certain to my bones that the book series, the Berenstein Bears, is spelled, Stein, as the last part of that word. However, it's really spelled Berenstain, Stain. Now, but I have a very distinct memory that it's Steen or Stein. I don't know how you'd actually pronounce that, but yeah. So that's an example. There's an example with Shaq and Sinbad. Like they confuse them with like this movie where I don't even know now. Like one of them is like a genie. It's like Shazam, or it's some like movie. But there's also like another famous one. But it's definitely possible. Like we have these mass hallucinations.
So it's true, right? I mean, one, I think I remember reading that article. It was a thing, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Somebody pushed it to me, and it was fascinating because you read through these things and you think, well, wait, am I on this team or this team in terms of which way do I remember that, or do I even remember that thing? But it was mostly 80s stuff, so I think all of us remembered all of it. It was just a question of how you remembered it because there's only so much stuff, right? You had to have seen the Shaq or Sinbad genie movie at Blockbuster at some point, at least the cover of it while you were walking around, looking for movies that you shouldn't have been looking at when you were a kid. Um, but it's such a powerful reminder to me of, man, you can be wrong. You can be sure and you can be wrong. And unfortunately, I think my joke about YouTube being edited, I think some people take that seriously. Like, no, it couldn't be me. It must be the world editing itself to kind of spiritorially change the facts so that I don't remember them right. But man, it is easy to fall into kind of this 1984 state where you can be unsure of what actually happened and what didn't happen because, man, you were sure and then you were wrong. But the lesson for all of that on me is like, we should always second guess ourselves. We should never be so confident in something that we believe that we're not willing to accept the possibility that we're wrong. And then when proven wrong, that we can't walk that back. I mean, that's a huge positive attribute in society that we need to preserve.
Yes, and that now you're getting at, what would be called by philosophers and academic types as epistemic
Mhm.
humility.
Yes.
So and which you could just drop the epistemic, right? Like that just means like you're kind of relating to knowledge or how we make sense of the world.
Epistemology.
What is our
Epistemology. Yeah.
right? And so it's just a humble posture towards what we actually think we know about the world. And I think when we don't have that, then we have a danger of a rude awakening.
No, 100%, man. 100%. And we've talked about this to a degree before. I think back when we were talking about mental health and kind of that balance between, skepticism and surety and your decision making. Like, how do you maintain this healthy balance between not being so wishy washy that you can't ever make a decision, but not also being so cocksure of what you got that you can't accept that you could be wrong or accept any kind of data that would contradict it. And so, yeah, humility, right? Epistemological humility, but just humility, just maybe humility across the board. You could be wrong.
Yes, and I think when people hear humility, they think you're being like a wallflower, you're being passive, you're letting people roll over you, you're not being assertive. And I think the humility that you and I are talking about is like, we're basically confident in ourselves. Like we're confident we can be humble. We can ask questions. If we don't know something, we're not afraid of looking stupid and asking a question. And that's different from just being passive and just letting life, pass you by and be very self-effacing. Like we're talking about, kind of a little bit different posture there.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. I think we could do a whole episode on leadership and the importance of that attribute in leadership. Like everybody has different leadership styles. There's a lot of different kinds of ways you can be leaders. I think some people can be, super charismatic and confident and just kind of pull people along. But I think if you don't have a touch of that humility and you don't have a touch of that willingness to, one, just kind of look stupid sometimes. Like, hey, man, I don't mind looking stupid. It's fine. Well, you got to have confidence to say I look stupid. That you can come across as one insecure, but I think you can also run the risk of becoming really toxic where you actually cannot be wrong. And so you end up kind of beating down people who are actually feeding you good information, who are telling you things you probably need to know, but you can create the conditions where people won't even tell you the truth anymore because you can kind of create this gap that is kind of unbridgeable. We're like, well, don't tell the boss that. He doesn't think it. And if he doesn't think it and you tell it to him, he's going to get pissed off and then he'll frag you. And you're like, well, that's one, an unhealthy code, but it's also stupid. You as a leader have become trapped in your own kind of ego and you are now making worse decisions than you would have otherwise.
Yes, and that relates to, when we were talking about, the battle between, democracies and totalitarian societies, that information processing thing. So like a leader needs ground truth to like understand and make effective decisions. So when you take the posture that you just described, like your people are not really going to be willing to bring you stuff. And I think one thing I struggle with humility is people like certainty. They like that in a leader. So if you're expressing like, well, let's develop the situation. Let's look at this further. People, it may not be an attractive quality, like especially in like a politician. Like we want our politicians to sound certain, even if they have no idea what they're talking about, which sucks because we would like a politician to be like curious and be like, well, I don't know. Let's look into it. But we tend to punish political leaders that don't express certainty.
That's true. That's very true. And I think, so I guess the way that I try to balance this as a leader and the way that I like when other leaders balance it, which I'm biased to this style. So, I mean, there's other styles, I get it. But the way I like to have that balance is like, there's a time to be decisive and there's a time to be uncertain. And you have to just kind of suss out when is one is when is the other. So I've been in a million meetings when, senior generals on very important issues, like let's talk about Ukraine, would kind of just waffle back and forth and say, well, we need a little more data on this. We need a little more data on this. And week to week to week, things are rolling by and thousands of people are not doing work that they should be doing because they're trying to like suss out these super like fine details that is that really important? And so you have to be able to cut through that as a leader and say, okay, what's really important? If I need to know, and it's really important, and I need to know that I'm not wrong on this, then okay, we need to go install a little bit and get some more data on that. But I have to make sure that that's not becoming, call it indecisiveness, call it moral cowardice, but the inability to pull the trigger when like, all right, we do know what we need to know. It's time to go now. And if I'm wrong, we'll correct, but I have to get people moving in this direction. And that balance is tough, right? That's a tough balance for anybody. I think the bigger the organization and the heavier the consequences, the harder it can be to really make that work. But it's critical because to your point, like the second people think you're indecisive and the second people think that you're not going to make a decision, everything falls apart. The whole organization stalls. People just kind of shut down or they start running amok. They start doing whatever they want. And so it's tough to find that balance.
Yes, and that's where I think the principle of, subsidiarity is so important, trying to solve things at the lowest level before they get higher. And then, I always related this like with my guys, I related it to, say you're assaulting a target, right? Like a direct action mission. You've got kind of your sled dogs, you got the guys, kind of the junior members of the group. And then you have like some kind of mid-level team leaders. Then you got like the senior enlisted and then you got, the ground force commander, the officer. And, if the guys at the bottom are like doing their jobs right, like they're looking for work, they're looking to get stuff done, they're solving problems at their level, then, the team leader has less work to do and he can kind of focus higher. The senior enlisted has less work to do. He's not like micromanaging down to the lower level. And then the ground force commander can actually like look, up and out and kind of be thinking about the next move. But when people aren't doing that, then your cognitive focus is dragged downward into like the next echelon, and that just slows the whole force down.
No, that's true, right? And it becomes responsibility. There's responsibility at every level to prevent that from happening. So the sled dogs in your analogy, or like the juniorest people in an organization, they have to have the confidence to know, okay, I'm doing this. This is my job. I don't need to tee up a decision to my boss every single 3 seconds. I need to know what I can do and what I can't. But the organization has a responsibility, kind of the other side of that, to give them the clear guidance and vision to say, hey, here's your left and here's your right. Within this space, I want you to just do what you can do. Outside of that space, I need you to come check in with me because you're getting into space that's either his business and I need to make sure you coordinate that, or it's just not your business. You're going the wrong direction. And so that clear vision is important. But I think sometimes leaders, as they move up, have trouble recognizing the difference between providing a vision and just getting in and running all the decisions themselves. Like they feel the need that being decisive means making all the decisions. Like, nah, man, that's not the way it is. And the further up you go, the less, well, I guess the lower percentage of decisions in the organization you should be making. You should be making the big decisions. You should be providing the directional kind of guidance to the organization, but you shouldn't be down in all those decisions. If your organization's making 1,000 decisions, maybe 3 of them should be at your level. The rest should be at all those echelons below you, because every decision you withhold is an entire swath of your organization that you've disabled by saying, no, you can't make a decision. I have to make that for you. And so you kind of paralyze it. And I think we have trouble with that. And to your point earlier about politicians, I think the level of visibility that is put on senior leaders and also the kind of mid leaders makes it very difficult to make good decisions in our large organizations today, because every decision is scrutinized as though it is being made with kind of this 100% awareness. And so how do you make, I guess, a mid-level decision that might look a little murky, but it's necessary to make the organization go if that decision is also immediately scrutinized by the entire public? It's a hard balance. It would be difficult to be a leader in one of those today. And so I think a lot of our political leaders feel trapped, and they just have to kind of say these like super dogmatic, super confident, decisive things so they don't get picked apart and shot down. But it's actually not constructive, right? They're actually kind of undermining the effectiveness of the government as a whole.
Wait, so just to go back to the senior military leader, so you're saying that like your sergeant major or your command master chief should not be watching the troop on ISR and radioing them to put their eye protection on. Is that correct?
I do think that is true. Yes, I believe that is true. That's wrong on so many levels. And I would watch it. We've shared some mission space. And when you have enough ISR assets being watched by enough people, you end up in this fishbowl scenario where people will do just that. Like they'll get on and like sharpshoot. Like, I think you need to be 1 rock to the left. Like, I'm getting shot at right now. Could you pretty please stop talking to me on the radio? Because it just cut out all of the traffic from everyone that I actually care about so that you could tell me that. Like it's that is the one level. Of course, micromanagement is just this super, like, it is so horrible. Like, it is the worst, not the worst. Okay, that's probably hyperbolic, but it is a terrible attribute in a leader to just dig down in like that. But the other side of it is I always just looked at it from taxpayer dollar side. It's like, wait, how much does it cost me per hour to fly that ISR platform up there? And what are you doing with it? Are you spot checking my choice of sunglasses with that ISR platform? What's that thing costing the taxpayer, including your salary and your surf and turf steak meal? How much is it exactly costing you to tell me to do that? What's going on there?
Yeah, I don't even want to go down that road, because that road lies just total madness, where it would be like, is this an effective business model to
shoot $20,000 hellfires at donkeys with AK-47s on them? Like, oh, we missed. Better re-engage. Like, now it's $40,000. Like, what? How is this gonna work?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's dark business.
Yeah. So, and yes. So to your point about leadership and where's the right level to make decisions, right? I think so. As I ascended in leadership ranks, like what I realized was like you have to be very explicit with what you're expecting. And I think when you're explicit with your subordinates off the bat, then it helps to give them, they understand like what is theirs to decide, and then what is what is theirs to like kick up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gives them the ability, and then they can make decisions, and they can say, hey, listen, we're doing X, Y, and Z. These are the reasons. And then you can just look at it and say, okay, hey, continue mission, nice work.
You're right. And that's what people mean when they say vision, right? When people talk about in leadership books, what is vision? What's a leader to have vision? It gets tossed around a lot. Like, this guy's got vision or this guy doesn't have vision. But I think what they mean is, hey, you have the ability to see where you want the organization to be and the ability to communicate, because that's only That's less than half of it to me, because there are a lot of really smart leaders that have vision and can see far and they know exactly where it needs to be. Absolutely useless if you can't also orient the entire organization to achieve that vision, because other than you're limited at the ability of you to do it. And if you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, that's actually a huge limit. Like, it's crippling. You could never achieve that by yourself because you need all of the other pieces of the organization to be doing it. So the second, and I think almost more critical piece of having vision is the ability to communicate the vision in a meaningful way. To your point, the explicit instructions like, look, this is what I really need you to do. And then also to communicate how that supports it all. Because explicit is good, but explicit with context, to me, is where you really shine. Like, especially your high performers will not, they're going to go past whatever your guidance is. They're going to be trying to do more than whatever you told them to do. But you have to make sure and provide the context to say, hey, when you do that, you're going to get here. You're going to get to your objective. When you go past that, because I know you will, make sure that you're also understanding the bigger picture here. Otherwise, you can run the risk of, your best people getting either super frustrated or actually working counter to what you want them to work, because they're running amok out there. They're like, hey, I did all kinds of good stuff. Aren't you happy? I brought you all these balls. Give me a pat. And you're like, I wanted green balls. You brought me red balls. You're a bad dog. And then like, oh no, I'm a bad dog. Oh, why am I a bad dog? It's tough.
Yes. And like, John Boyd talks a lot about some different German concepts like Auftragsstatik, which is basically like this, mission type orders, right? So I tell you to take the hill. I don't tell you how to take the hill. And then there's like Einheit, which is unity. And that's, so what these terms are getting at is the trust between, the leaders and the people they lead. Like, it's like a two-way street, right? Like, you trust the leader because he's competent. He or she has proven their competence. And then the leader trusts the subordinates. It's just a relationship thing. So when you build that, then there's like this mutual understanding, and, subordinates can go out and make good decisions and kind of like move the ball forward.
So it's funny, that relies on two things. One, it relies heavily on continuity. One, I love German words, man. Is there any language that staples together longer and more complicated words than German? It's amazing.
They really do.
Living over there, like, what the hell, man? What does that mean? They're usually compound, so it's not that bad if you actually knew the words. You could break them down, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But the one thing that requires, the basically you're talking about mission command, right? Which is the Army's, theoretically, it is the Army's doctrine for how to conduct, supposedly, how to conduct battlefield leadership. But it's the idea that, hey, but it takes time. And that's the one thing it requires is time, because you need trust. And trust is not built overnight. Trust, we all walk into the organization with a base level of trust. Like, okay, I see what you're wearing. I understand who you are. Therefore, I trust you to this degree. But really, trust is built with time and interoperability. Like, we work together. I tell you things, you do the things. I like the way you do the things, or I don't, and I correct you. Okay, now we understand each other. It takes, a degree of back and forth. Good, got it. Now I trust that when I give you a thing, you can do it, and you can do it the way I want without me being in your business. But the second piece of it to me, and this is funny because it works completely counter to mission command, is the advance of technology has basically undermined that concept. And I straight up, it has given us the ability to flat comms, right? Flat comms. We need to work toward flat comms. Like, well, flat comms means that every person can see every piece of communication in the organization, which just means that senior leaders get to see all the sausage being made below them, which means I think they feel obligated to like chime in. Like, oh, no, do that. It paralyzes the organization by getting them, immersed in this swamp of decisions that are beneath them, but also kind of having them they get this sense of like, oh, things aren't being done right. I got to act. But it's crippling. It's actually bad. I would love us to go back away from technology in that sense.
Well, yes. And that's, that's like, Nixon directing bombing strikes, like he's picking targets during Vietnam from the White House, and it's like, okay, that's clearly not a healthy like command system if that's happening.
We're so far past that.
But yeah, so you're and to your point, like, yeah, especially with SOF, I would like to get to the point where it's like, hey, you put some people in motion and they're going to go out and Lawrence of Arabia this thing, and they're not going to like be getting micromanaged over comms. They're going to go out, you give them a mission, put them in play, and then 6 months later, like, see what they did. But yes, you're absolutely right. Technology undermines mission command, and it allows And I think there's institutional incentives, right? Because if you're a leader, like you want to look good, you want to get advanced, you don't want to get fired. So yeah, you're going to be all up in the business of your subordinates. But and it's hard for a leader to have the wisdom to like, yeah, listen, we got to give these guys some rope, let them innovate. Yeah, they're gonna step on their crank every once in a while, but like they're gonna at the end of the day, like they're closest to the problem. So like let's let them eat.
No, that's 100% true. Um, but it's funny. The extra wrinkle in that is even if you did have the wisdom to do it at your level, the guy above you can also see all of the communications down and in, and then you can actually risk looking either disinterested or just lazy at your level because well, why aren't you getting involved in these things? I'm involved in them, and I'm above you, so why aren't you involved? You're like, actually, in this case, I'm going to take the opposite of Jocko. I'm like, no, actually, inaction in this case as a leader is often the right answer. Like I know he's very biased toward action. I totally understand where he's coming from. It's a great mindset. But as a leader, I found that I actually had to walk that mindset back in myself and frequently say, hey, man, I know that I have a bias toward action. I need to actually take no action. Sometimes I need to just sit and let people do their thing and stay out of their business. Every time I call, every time I ask a question, I'm disrupting that guy's ability to do the thing that I already told him to do. And so if I've specified my reporting window and said, hey, go do this in a week, tell me what you did. And then every day I bother him in between there. Well, what have I done? Like why I determined initially, presumably with some intelligence that a week was sufficient interval for me to know. And I didn't need to know more than that. But you just sit in your office and you're like, I could ask questions today. What's going on with that? They ask me questions. A hire has asked me a question. I must know the answer to this question. You're like, I'm going to get involved. It's like, what? It's so stupid.
And so it is, yeah, it is hard for that leader to like to use like a modern phrase from therapy culture, like to hold space, like to kind of like keep that buffer away from the group below. It's like it's not unlike when I'm watching my children and they're trying to murder each other, and I'm just letting them play. And then my wife calls me and says, "What's going on? It sounds like the kids are trying to murder each other." And I say, "Hey, listen, I'm just letting them, innovate and work things out at their
It's
level."
pretty much therapy. You're pretty much just administering therapy. You're setting the conditions for the therapy. But actually, it's funny that you blend those two because I don't know, in my head it was separate. But now I'm like, well, alcohol works well providing that in parenting. Like a little bit of booze
Mm,
actually helps a lot with making me like not get involved. So maybe I should apply that
mm,
at work. I'm like, if I were drunk at
true.
work more often, would I feel less pressure to get involved in all my subordinates' decisions? What do you think? Is this a new leadership fad?
So, I mean, we can definitely investigate this new method, this paradigm, and see and suss it out. I think was it Norm on Cheers that talked about your brain cells are like a herd of buffalo, and the beer, alcohol is killing brain cells, but it's only killing the slowest and weakest ones. So you actually are smarter after you have a few beers because it's called all the weak brain cells.
Well, God rest his soul, right? Because I think he died
Mm,
just very recently.
he did.
And I saw some great memes on him showing up to heaven with the bar stool, and yeah, that's awesome, man. That's good stuff. But that
Yeah.
analogy only works, I think, if you imagine that brain cells reproduce, right? Because I mean, if they're finite, then I think
That's
I
true.
think the herd just keeps getting smaller. It may be the most nimble and advanced and intelligent of the buffalo, but it's still only going to be a few buffalo. Probably better off with a few more.
True.
Plus, you need
Very, very true.
those weak brain cells to survive things like I don't know TBIs and concussions and all the other stuff that
Mm,
kills off brain cells over the years.
we need all hands on deck in that scenario.
Even
Uh,
bad brain
but
cells.
let's talk. Yeah, we need everybody. Let's talk about the request that you had that you threw out to me about a week and a half ago about the artwork.
Oh, dude. Okay, that's fair. So we've been talking leadership. That's good. Leadership's been fun, but this is totally not leadership. This is taking, I think, the technology that we just scoffed at and taking that all the way around, saying this is it at its very best. This is AI at its most useful. So, all right. So growing up in the 80s, huge nerd, right? Big Frank Frazetta fan. So love me some like super great paintings of like Conan the Barbarian wrestling an ape or, random token barbarian saving lady in bikini chainmail. Like great stuff, man. Frank Frazetta, totally classic. And so I got this idea like, well, Surf and Turf could be a Frank Frazetta show. AI, they make it so easy. I mean, deepfakes, you can make anything look like anything, right? So it should be really easy to do this. Turns out, no, if you're not willing to pay money and you're just looking at free AI programs, my abilities were very limited to produce anything quality. So naturally, turned it over to my partner in crime. I was like, Adam, I failed at this task. I cannot make a Surf and Turf Frank Frazetta piece of art. Can you succeed? Man,
Yeah, so I gave it a whirl. I threw it into ChatGPT, saw what it could do for me. Took some innovation, took some iterations. I fed it some
the prototype.
pictures of you and I. I had to go away from they had one of you, like just in like a loincloth and a sword, and I'm like, this is too ambiguously gay duo for me. I had to,
Two-way Gary.
yeah. But yeah, so we ended up like we found one, we got one that's decent. And because yes, you and I yeah, I'm a game master, you're a game master for tabletop role-playing games. Huge love of, fantasy canon. But yeah, Frazetta is like, for us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, like totally all that just that artwork, just epic artwork. But yeah, so we have our own show image now that we will link in the show notes. You can check out that, and maybe we'll use it as the show thumbnail.
It's got to be the show thumbnail. My wife asserts that it doesn't actually look like us, but I don't know. I mean, at some point, perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? You're like, it's pretty good. I think it looks decent.
Oh, it's close enough.
I think yours looks
yeah,
closer.
like your dimensions, like you almost look like a halfling. Like I'm like, your size is just not
the
totally
head is
matching
too large,
up, but
like it's not lined up.
Yeah, it's like the head is too large for the body, but you know what? Whatever, it's fine.
Hey,
it
man,
works.
AI at its absolute fine. In fact, I can't think of a single better use for AI than allowing people to turn themselves into Frank Frazetta art. Like that's probably as good as it gets.
I mean, that is what a magical time that we live in.
I'm seriously,
Truly,
in the world of like potential
magical.
Skynet scenarios, like the lady that got eaten by the Roomba, and you're like, that's where it starts. In that world, this is the best use for AI that exists. So yeah, 100%. We'll hang that guy on the thumbnail and let people bask in its ridiculous glory.
It's just the absurdity, but yes.
Well, before we go hard circle everywhere else, wherever we're going to go with this, I did want to take one more thing with the imperfection of memory because it's huge for me. So you've read Tim O'Brien, right? The Things They Carried.
Yes.
So love me some Tim O'Brien. Love Tim O'Brien. He nailed the life of an infantryman. At kind of, it's dark. It's kind of the dark side of it, but he nailed that really, really well. There is a facet of being in the infantry that he captures just better than anyone, and I love it. But he also, one of his huge themes is that there is this kind of built-in falsity with every war story because how does he describe it? He says the truth of what's going on is more important than the falsehood of the events that he actually recounted. So he's like, I use false events that I know are a little false to generate the actual truth of the situation, which he thinks is more important than any of the events. But I think he's also a little tongue in cheek with it because he's saying that actually everybody remembers it differently anyway. And so the idea that you could ever know what happened is really difficult. And I love that. One, the Fonz, it just kind of brought it back to the fore, but I bump into this a lot writing. Like, do you encounter that a lot when you talk to old buddies about things that happened?
So I don't know if I can think of an exact example, except I definitely know, you see that in a debrief, you'll see people will have wildly different recollections of events based on that. And so from a storyteller perspective, you have the cliches like never let the truth get in the way of a good story. But what that's getting at is, the purpose of a story. Like, yes, there's one like instrumental, definition we could take, which is you are going to factually relate everything as possible, as close to accurate as you can, right? That's one definition. But I think the definition that Tim O'Brien's getting at and the definition that you and I are interested in is, we are relating a kernel of something important to other humans, and we may not, we may have to deviate from the precise factual circumstances in order to best do that. And really, like, the best stories to me are transmitting these like pieces of wisdom to like the people that are listening, that are then going to arm them and make them better prepared to kind of deal with life. So, definitely, I think, I think that's he's pointing at kind of a classic decision that a storyteller has to make.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's easier in fiction, right? When you're writing like what you say is fiction. And to be fair, I think he labeled the things they carried fiction. I believe it's technically a novel, which is kind of funny, but I think it's not intended to be. I think he's enjoying that kind of split right there. But it's when you're dealing with fiction, it's pretty easy. I mean, you just make the characters, you make the story flow in the way that you want in order to tell the story, or I guess convey the idea that you want to convey. And I don't mean it's simple technically to make that happen, but I mean that you're not constrained by facts, so you can make it whatever you want in order to achieve kind of the desired effect. But man, nonfiction, right? So, I mean, I write war stories, I write books on this stuff, and I feel obligated to not put things in that are false. But every once in a while, when I'm interviewing people for this stuff or I'm talking to, old buddies who remember it, I'm blown away by how differently we remember the thing. The same event can be remembered astronomically differently if the guy was one block over, or sometimes even if it was right next to you. Like, are you sure? How, what? And we got to go find a third source to try and like split the difference, or average the stories to figure out what actually happened.
Yeah, and so there was a show. I don't know what channel it was on. It was called Brain Games, and it was all about just how fallible our minds are in terms of like, it's just taking in so much stuff, and if we tried to recall everything perfectly, I think we would kind of overload the system. So, Brain Games showed these like they did these different scenarios where they kind of like they enacted some sort of like crime in front of a group of people, and then they asked them all questions about what they saw, and it was interesting to see people's recollection morph and shift as like like I listened to you, I listened to Dan's testimony, and Dan says that the guy had a green shirt on, so then I like incorporate that into my memory, and I'm like, oh yeah, it was a green shirt, and it became like this almost like collective recollection activity.
You can see it though. You can see how it happens. I mean, one, I think it's a point of focus issue. So I've seen some of the brain game stuff, but also just in terms of like combat scenarios, you can only like when you go from like wide vision, I'm looking around to see what's going on, to kind of this narrow vision to I'm dealing with something in front of me. I mean, you get a little tunnel vision, right? You lose the broader perspective in order to see the thing you saw. But in a lot of combat scenarios, me and the other people around me are looking at our points of focus very different. The medic is looking at this. I am looking at this, trying not to look at anything, trying to keep big picture. Other guy is looking at this door that he's got to breach, or a guy is looking at that person where this window where somebody's shooting at us from. And so you can see how the memory gets built around the thing you were focused on, and then kind of like, well, okay, now it's getting assembled. And that becomes what you remember. But the second piece of it, and I think it's what you're talking about with the shirt, is I think we also like to build stories in our heads because we like to make the event make sense. It does not, in my head, when I think back on these things, they're not just random series of occurrences. They're like, okay, this happened and this happened, and it makes a story out of it. But when we kind of bolt those facts on, whether because people told us the facts, or we saw the thing ourselves, or we read about it later in an after action review, and we start cobbling together the story, I think invariably we start building this thing that is true to us, but probably has holes in it in terms of like what actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, we're definitely meaning making creatures, and then we want to have a narrative that a holistic narrative that makes sense when in reality, it may not, it may not map perfectly onto the situation, and that's why there's expressions like the truth is stranger than fiction, and I'm sure that you have encountered like you've both met humans and you've encountered situations that are so ridiculous that if you read them in a fiction novel, you would say like, oh, this is like, how'd this get past the editor? This is like too, this person is too ridiculous, or this situation is too absurd or too coincidental. But we encounter them. And so it's like, you can't even put that in a fictional thing because it seems, over the top.
It's true. Tim O'Brien loves that theme. He loves to talk about how you'll know a good war story because you won't believe it. Like that's how you know it's a good war story, because it's something so ridiculous that it couldn't happen. But man, I had one of those one of those things that happened to me in Iraq. So it's in It Was What It Was. It's a scene that I wrote into It Was What It Was because I just couldn't not, right? It's so good. But I remember we were driving out into sector and we're in this convoy of, you know, I guess it had been 4 or 5 Humvees, and it's like month 8 of 15, and it's just patrol number, 183 out of 572, or whatever the hell it was, right? Who knows? So we're like driving out, and we're going under underpass, and in Baghdad at this time, there are people, American troops everywhere. I mean, the force density is shockingly high. So you drive into sector, you'll see guys from like, oh, there's another division. There's some dudes over there. There's another unit over there. Anyway, so we're going under an overpass. And this is like American overpass, right? Straight highway. There's a big concrete overpass over it, where it's 2 highways kind of meeting. And it's got a clover leaf, a full-on figure 8 clover leaf. And we're going to take this clover leaf and go into sector just like we do every day. So there's a striker unit going over this overpass as we're going under it. And we're driving up, blah, blah, talking about, bullshit, the same bullshit you always talk about when you're bored and hot. And all of a sudden this IED cooks off and blows the striker off of the overpass, right? And a striker is an 8-wheeled, like it is a substantial piece of machinery for people that are not, sure what a striker is. You Google that guy. It is not like a Honda Civic. It is a huge, it is a large piece of military machinery. And so a blast strong enough to blow that through the retaining wall of concrete overpass over that and then drop, 40 feet. What's a standard overpass? 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet. I mean, it's tall. Let's just say tall. I think I researched this and when I wrote the book, but I forgot. So striker falls off. Now, in the strikers, there's no turret on these strikers. There's little hatches, and there's always a guy with his head poked out. He stands there because he's called air guard. And in theory, you're looking for airplanes, but really it's just looking around because you're in this armored box. And you can't see what's up. So one guy has to keep his head up to like see what's going on. That guy gets launched out by the blast. So he's fired out of it like a shot. And I remember watching him. I'm just staring and I watched this striker fall all the way and hit the ground with like this, nuclear plume of dust because it's like 1,000,000 pounds and it just hit, the concreted dirt. And I watched this dude fall next to it. It just land. It disappear into the cloud of dust. And I'm like, that dude's dead. So we drive up there. We're like, oh man, what are we going to do? Because the rest of the striker convoy, of course, has to take this whole clover leaf to get down. So it's going to take them a minute, let's say, to navigate all of this, but we're right there. So we like set up the perimeter. We get out. I remember sitting there next to the comms guys like, hey man, grab the shovel. We're going to need to go dig these people out because they're just buried. And so we get up there. We like go up. Okay, my boys all spread out. They're doing their things. And I see this guy like stand up and brush himself off. It's like, this is the guy who fell. And he's just standing there. He's just like private in his ACUs with his helmet. And he's like just looking all dazed. And he's like, I just remember walking up to him with the medic, old doc, was like, hey kid, you all right, buddy? You okay? And the dude is just like, yeah, I'm good. It's like, so one, you just got blasted. You're probably in the middle of an ambush. Like probably horrible things are going on right now. So you should probably sit down. But two, like, why aren't you dead? Like what? Anyway, like, hey, so I remember one of my squad leaders takes this kid. He's like, hey, come on, man, let's go sit in the back of the truck. Let's go sit down. Just take it easy for a minute. Just kind of, and we ended up taking him to the hospital and getting him checked out. But he was good. He was just fine. He just got blown up, launched out of a tank, fell 50 feet, hit the pavement. Totally fine. What the hell, man? What the hell? Stranger than fiction, right? Stranger than fiction.
And so we had I was thinking of something similar to that. Like we were doing just a hook and climb exercise on a ship, and similar thing. Like we had
Describe hook and climb. I know what that is. But
so all right, yeah. So what happens is you're basically coming up next to a ship, kind of pirate style, and you have a large pole with a hook, and then this very thin ladder. And you basically like attach that to the side, and then you climb up it and board the ship and kind of take it over. So you're basically like a pirate,
like pirates.
But it's
the analogy continues, but there's a lot more similarities. But please go ahead.
And it's a totally like sketchy. It's probably one of the more dangerous things we do, honestly, just because it's so sketchy, and there's so many like places for bad things to happen. So in generally, like when we do it in training, you have like safety personnel on the ship. So they will after you hook it and seat the hook with the ladder, they will attach a safety runner to that, like as like a backup in case the hook fails. You have like this backup system, right? And we were like the hook point was like probably 40 feet or so, 45 feet. It maxed out our pole. Like we had this like kind of painter pole, almost like this aluminum thing. And we have some better ones, but we were just using this kind of like we have like pneumatic ones, but this one was like just one that you just kind of click into place.
And
right?
it looks like
we had already broken a.
it looks like a tree stick, right? It looks like an extendable stick with just rungs sticking out of the
Yes.
sides. That's what I'm picturing with the hook on the end of it.
Well, yes. So we've got a pole that you mount the hook to, and then you're basically gonna disconnect the pole, and you're gonna leave the hook with the ladder on it. So
sense.
the ladder is like the ladder is about 6 inches wide, and it's like it's made out of steel, twisted
Like a helicopter
wire.
ladder, like the same kind you use under a 60.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes. Yeah, we call them like caving ladders. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're doing like training iterations. We're doing it. We're breaking poles because it's so high. We're like on our last pole, and we're like doing kind of like one of our last runs, and guys start climbing up, and we end up like we have too many people on the ladder. Like that's kind of our first mistake, is you really only want to have like 2 people max on the ladder at a time. We ended up like having 3, and then we have like a 4th guy is like starting to climb. So we have too many people. But what happens is, they put the secondary from above, and guys are climbing, and the what ends up happening is the ladder gets fouled on part of the boat, and gets kind of like attached to the boat, and then the boat is hitting swells, and it basically like shock loads the ladder, and it causes the primary to fail and the secondary to fail. And so dudes are just launched in the air. And there was a guy that was like literally right at the top, like he was like a couple feet from finishing, and he dropped. So this immediately becomes like a mass casualty thing.
Day or night?
And
Day or night? Did you say that?
This is day.
Okay.
Well, so it's day, and it transitions into night. And so we got lucky. Like we just got helicopters that day. And so like I went and like did the coordination with them, like make sure they can support us. They know where we're training. They can support us for casualty evacuation. And so we end up doing like a day into night hoist. Like it becomes like a night hoist. Like we did like we hoisted 3 dudes and medevaced them to the hospital after this. But and that was, I mean, those dudes were like magnificent. But so what was crazy was like the guy that was the highest was the least injured out of the guys. Like the two middle, like the guy that was just like on the bottom, like he kind of just got a concussion. Just a concussion, right? Because like some guys like fell on him.
Just a permanent brain
but like
injury.
2 of the other guys,
So not big.
yeah, two of the guys were seriously injured, and then the 3rd guy from the highest part literally like cut his face on like the 50 cal that was mounted in the front of the boat. But he was like otherwise like didn't break a leg, didn't break anything crazy. But it was one of those situations where you're like, how is that guy, like that guy fell the highest, and he basically just has like a face like cut that needs like a couple stitches. That was like the extent of his injuries.
And he fell. I mean,
So
to hit a 50 cal emplacement on a boat means you hit a piece of steel after falling 40
Mhm.
feet with your face. And so it's one of those like
yes.
3 inches to the right, no teeth, broken occipital bone, cracked skull. Like it somehow,
Yeah.
man, just a couple of stitches, good to go.
Yeah. So I guess that's it. Yeah. Both those stories I think are examples of, it's just something that if you try to fictionalize that, you would not include those types of stories, because you're like, that violates kind of like normal human causality.
Like Jack Bauer doesn't have adventures as exciting as some of the things that actually happen. The difference is, of course, that I think for most of us, I mean, that's like 2 or 3 in an entire career that are that remarkable. I mean, obviously it's hard to make a fictional story out of that, because most of it's actually just kind of boring or routine. But man, when it gets exciting, it can get really, really spicy really quick.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. And I think that's when you're telling a story, it's like you have to, what's the expression? Like tell the fast parts slow and tell the slow parts fast.
That's right.
So that you're kind of elongating those very like dramatic and like kind of impactful moments.
Yeah, Tolkien has a great quote on that, right? Like things that are pleasant and, don't take much telling and aren't really much to read about, but things that are horrible actually are really interesting and people like to dig deep into them. And there's a lot of truth to that, right? You can blush over, or you can brush over 6 months of relaxing time that could be the best time ever, like hanging out with your kids, having a great time. But man, that car wreck, that's the thing you're going to spend 15 chapters on because it's exciting. And that's the kind of stuff people want to dig into.
Well, yes. And not only that, it's because that's what is going to convey an evolutionary advantage to the people that are listening or watching the story, is like, that's where it's really like, hey, kids, like you're gathered around the fire and you're like, hey, kids, let me tell you about the time I almost died. And then here's the 3 things you can take away from this story so that, if you encounter this situation, you can navigate it better than I did.
Don't foul the ladder, right? Don't foul the ladder.
Yeah.
Double check.
Just
Don't foul the ladder.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tangent, but I hope that one thing I hope that people take away from these stories is, hey, VA benefits get discussed a lot on the news. They get discussed back and forth. They get kicked around. And frankly, there's a lot of bullshit artists that fraudulently claim VA benefits, that do this and that. But I can rarely look at a combat arms guy, like a person who was no kidding, like one of the boys out there doing the things for 5, 10, 20 years, and I feel like probably he took enough damage in his career that dude probably deserves a little bit of help moving forward with all the medical conditions. Because I look at that dude that fell 40 feet and cut his face off. Like, one, he probably did that 15 more times, right, over the course of his career. But two, the stuff that doesn't hurt that day. And it's just been such a weird realization about getting older. Like, there's so many things that did not hurt at the time and didn't hurt for years later that all of a sudden, I don't know why, there's some kind of cumulative effect. It just starts to wear your ass out. And I just hope we don't forget. We don't forget what those dudes did every single day, and the kind of the cost that has on their long-term health when we look at those sorts of things.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so if we're gonna send people out to do those sorts of things, then we have to take care of them on the backside. And I think that's kind of the trust that gets back to the Aufkratzstatik, the trust, between a country and the soldiers that it sends out in harm's way. And that's also, even, whether you're at war or not, just training for war is such a demanding thing that you're just going to incur a lot of those injuries.
Yeah, for sure. I think that society asks a lot, and then they owe the person back a little bit on that. And it just is a public service announcement. Hey, man, the people out there that are bullshitting the system and didn't do anything and know they didn't do anything, like, shame on you. Shame on you, because you're going to ruin that system for everybody. The people that, and they know who they are. But yeah, man, it is what it is. Well, we
it is indeed what it is.
It is what it is, man. You can't fix all that stuff. It's so we totally went a different direction than we planned for this show. So we're not planning. It was what it was. See, look at that. Like, great marketing, Adam. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Actually,
I got you, brother.
Thank you, man. It actually hit the Amazon bestseller for a while. It was number 1 in its category for a little bit. Yeah, for a bit.
It should be. It absolutely should be.
I'm glad you liked it, man. It actually turned out pretty good, I think. But next one, getting close. 2 chapters left, which means maybe by the end of the year. That's the goal.
Very nice. Yeah, we need, at a certain point, we need to talk like writing process. I'm very curious, like how yours differs from mine with like fiction, nonfiction.
I bet it's quite different. I bet, just given the way we handle life in general, that your process is very different than my process.
No, I'm sure it's the same, actually, Dan. Come on.
There's only one right way. So I'm sure you do it too, because you're cool. And cool people do things the
Obviously.
right way. Obviously. Oh my gosh. So we were going to take this show a different direction today. And then we got sidetracked by like falsity of memory. We started talking about leadership. Mm-hmm. We started talking about the qualities that make good leadership, bad leader. We started talking about, and then we just got into war story time. We started talking about like, all the old stuff. But I guess I'm good with that. It's like we can't even call it a tangent now. We didn't go off on a tangent. We just never took the right exit at all. So we just went a totally different place.
I mean, we let our discussion bloom organically, Danielson.
You're right. You know what? That's the nice way of saying it. We just went where the spirit took us today. The force, was it our guy? I don't know. Maybe we were just mouthpieces for something larger that wished to convey a message through us.
We did. The numinous.
Exactly. Now, I will say he probably could have picked a better mouthpiece because, there's only so many people. You probably should have picked somebody with, but hey, we appreciate it. We appreciate that bit of inspiration that was flowing through us today. And I guess we can talk about the topic. We can talk about the origin story next week. So to kind of wet everybody's whistle on that. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about origin stories. We were going to go like straight
Mm,
Weapon X program. Why are
mm.
these two people talking to me on this podcast? What the hell qualifies them to say anything worth listening to? Like, I thought we got to just talk. We should have probably done it in the beginning. Instead, we jumped straight in. We're like, now we got to go back comic book style and tell that
I mean, I
story.
feel like it's good. I could talk about myself in like 2 minutes because I don't like to. I'm just not a fan of talking about myself.
Well, that's my
Um,
job is to pick the rest out of you. Like we're just gonna pull that out.
yeah,
You got to talk about what made you, man. Like why are
I
you
know.
credible? Why are you credible? And you can talk about it in generalities. Talk
I
about the people around you. It's
am
easy enough.
am I credible?
Well, I think that we can at least determine that you are not, right? And so, like, hey, that's fine. If people listen and they're
Okay.
like, you know what? I suspected these were not credible individuals. Now I am 100%
Yes.
sure. Then we will provide a valuable
Okay.
service to those on the fence folks who are trying to determine if we're credible.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's actually that would be a public service.
There would be a valuable public service. We will finally discredit ourselves as reputable people. Like,
Okay. All right. All right. What else? Let me think about what else is good what else happened this week that was good. Yeah, man, I'm excited about my writing process. It's like definitely I'm making some tracks. I'm at like 30,000 words. This draft, I feel good about it. What else
that's
is
huge,
good?
man. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
so give me an update on the agent because we haven't talked about this. What's going on, man? Books getting
Yes,
shopped around.
so we're out on submission and I mean it's just a long slow process. This is the first book. So it's kind of, I get impatient with it. It's just I've been on this train for so long, I get to a certain point where I'm like I should just self-publish it because it's you just gotta get tired of it. So I'm trying to let it play out for another few months and then go from there. Writing the second book, I feel really good about the second book, and just kind of just you just have to be patient.
They say the best way to sell a book is to write another book. I mean, that is I think one of the old
Yeah.
truisms. Like, just write more books, and then your other books will sell better. Seems easy enough. Just write more books, Adam.
Yes, and well, I mean, and if you're a writer, it's like building up your backlist is one of the best ways to you know be able to live as a writer is and then people kind of discover you and then they buy like all your books. So I think that's the hope. And yeah, so I'm just gonna start. I just decided I'm just gonna get started and just get to work.
I think the best way to live as a writer is to retire from the military. Like, that seems like the very best way.
You either need to marry a very wealthy spouse, or you need to
Patient too. Someone
get a
someone who
nice
accepts you sitting at home writing.
yes, or you can risk your life for 27 years for your country and get a pension.
There we go.
Like those are, option one, marry a rich spouse. Option two, risk your life for 27 years for your country.
I feel like we took the dumber option, but I don't know that the other option was really available to me.
We 100%. Yes. Yes. We did not look for wealthy spouses.
It probably wouldn't have worked anyway. Let's not get ourselves. But that's okay. I actually ended up doing, I think, better than I ever deserved. I think that's it for today, man. I mean, again, we went totally different destination, man. Different city. We were aiming for Chicago.
It did. All right. So now,
Detroit.
Okay. So if you're serious about this, and I have to actually think about what I want to say about myself,
you're gonna have to go somewhere with it. It's gonna need a deep message. It's gonna need to show like trauma, show you as a deep individual, or it's gonna have to show you as being kidnapped by an organization that put metal into your bones. You can make it up. I don't care if it's true.
So, okay. So yeah, I started back in the Civil War. My brother and I fought in the Civil War. Some crazy stuff happened, and then I'm here now.
That sounds amazing. That's you yada yada over a lot of things. But that's okay. We're gonna pick that apart, man. We're gonna go deep. We're gonna go deep into Adam. We're gonna go there. It's gonna be great. It sounds like an awful. It didn't come off well at all, but that's all right. Let's
wrap
it up for the week on that note and just call it good.
All right, brother. Sounds good. See you.